Welcome everyone to the Ontology Summit 2023. Today is the 15th of February 2023. And we have a very interesting session today on the OBO dashboards. So I will hand it over to our capable co-chair and host for today, James Overton, who will introduce our speakers. James.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, we have another really great session lined up for you today. Charlie Hoyt, Nico Matentzoglu, and Anita Caron are going to present on OBO dashboards. And this is stuff that's really come into its own in the last couple of years. And it's really helped push our community towards kind of standardization, quality control, and making all these kinds of things easy to find, problems easy to find and easy to fix. So Charlie is a postdoctoral researcher at Harvard Medical School, and he's done just a ton of work improving our OBO community, especially our metadata. And he also has done a ton of work on prefixes in the bio space and handling all that stuff, cleaning it up and improving it. Nico, I work with Nico on a whole bunch of different things. He has a consulting company called Semantically, and he does work for EBI and Monarch and a whole bunch of different groups. And as you saw last week, he's the lead developer of the Ontology development kit. So absolutely indispensable in our OBO community. And yeah, Anita is growing in importance in our community as well. You saw her presenting last week on ODK stuff. She is a semantic web developer at EBI. And works on a number of different ontology projects in the OBO space. So yeah, we have an exciting talk today, and like all the talks that we've been doing, just whether or not you're in OBO, I think there's going to be interesting stuff to learn about your ontologies and your projects and your workflows. So I will turn it over to the presenters. Yeah, thanks. Take it away.
Excellent. Let's give it 1 second. It always takes yeah, I think you should see my screen now. Can someone confirm? I will put it into slideshow.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
All right, excellent. All right, yeah, thank you very much, James, for the introduction. Let's start a little bit with talking about the problem of encouraging and monitoring ontology standardization and interoperability as a whole, and then descend from there into the issue how dashboards can help us with some of the resulting problems. So we can roughly divide the problem of ontology interoperability into 4 layers. So I made the OBO part, the biomedical part, a bit smaller, because I think in general these layers apply to all open ontology projects that exist, but we filled here, you know, some of the examples we filled in here, they are specific to our to the OBO community specifically. So at the bottom, we have the layer of general openness and fairness. So here we simply want to make it possible to find ontologies, to access ontologies, and most importantly, to have them in an open space and openly accessible. So this is in particular the files that contain the axiom. So that's like the very, very basic thing that should be fulfilled in order to facilitate something like interoperability. In the next layer, we have the problem of common formats and tools. So we've heard in the last weeks a lot about tools like Robot, which is also built on the OWL API, the ODK, and many other tools that exist like RDFlib, fast OBO, OWL tools, DOS-TP tools, and so on. So there are many different toolkits that we are using and many toolkits that you are using, and it's one part of standardization to kind of like get the community to learn and work with a similar set of tools that understand a commonly used file format. So in particular, there are many different file formats, as you know, like RDF XML, Turtle, OWL XML, and functional syntax. And one part of standardization is to figure out, like, can we provide the ontologies in a standardized form that all of these different tools can actually read and operate with. One part of that is often overlooked, in particular if you're coming from the RDF domain, is that a lot of the content, actually a huge majority of the content in our ontologies. Sorry, so someone said something? Oh, stories. It seems that a lot of the content in our ontologies are actually cross-referenced to various databases, and here a huge problem is actually the standardization of prefixes, such as the work that Charlie's been doing with bioregistry. And then on the next level, we have the shared vocabularies and upper level integration. So a few weeks ago, we've heard a bit about COP, which provides an upper layer for aligning our class layer, let's say, but there are other standards like the relation ontology, which is supposed to standardize the relationships that we're using ontologies, and the OBO metadata ontology, which is standardizing the kind of annotation properties that we are encouraging to use across the OBO sphere. So here it's all about using and reusing the common terms when we are building our ontologies. And then in the highest level of integration, one that is generally obviously the poorest in practice, the kind of area of shared design patterns, where you not only use the same relationships, but also use them in the same way. How do you write your axioms and make sure that people that write define a phenotypic abnormality, that define a mixture in an environmental ontology, they use the same axiomatic structure in order to achieve this. So the OBO Foundry, how does the OBO Foundry generally actively engage in the process of facilitating this kind of interoperability? So we've heard we're developing some standards like COP, RO, and OMO. We're developing some infrastructure like Robot ODK and the dashboard we're getting to in a bit. But we also develop a set of principles, the famous OBO principles, that is our kind of way of promoting the development of open and fair ontologies. So we'll see a little bit about that in the next slides. But the last big thing that we are doing is we are building a community that facilitates a sort of collective growth towards more standardization, shared practices, and interoperability. So that's a very important other role that OBO Foundry is taking as well in this general process. So what are some examples of concrete problems that hamper interoperability? We have hinted at some of them. So we have a lot of variation across the different ontologies in terms of, for example, the properties we are using. So people that want to describe partonomy, part of, may use completely different relationships from RO or from some other namespace. We have a very high variability of annotation properties. So people may link the respective issue tracker item, for example, using RDFSC also, or they use a specific IAO issue tracker item property. We have other kinds of, these are just a tiny selection. There are an endless number of examples like that, where people are just using different annotation properties to describe the kind of same thing. We have a great variation in versioning habits, like how exactly do you represent the version information in your ontologies, and we see a little bit about that later. And in the representation and thus also interpretability of cross-references and other mappings, for example, with a wide level of different prefixes that are being used. We have also problems like measuring and determining how active and responsive are ontologies to deal with requests. So it's a very sad truth that many ontologies that are in the OBO Foundry, when you as a user make the hard effort to actually request a new term and or figure out a problem and inform people about a problem, or even open a pull request or something like that, that many ontologies just, they, for whatever reason, they don't have the resources, they don't have the time, they don't want to for some reason, they just do not deal with your requests. So this is a very important part of standardization that we need to address as a whole, as a community. Yeah, and then the generally, again, the chaos on the prefixes. We have, sorry, I said that before, but generally the way that we represent our queries, for example, in cross-references, are extremely variable. Whether you use ICD-10, ICD-10-CM, ICD to denote an ICD term, no one knows exactly what you mean. Is it which version, which exact flavor of ICD? And there's a great need of standardizing in this area as well. All right, so now let's zone in a bit and segue into the OBO dashboard slowly. So we have the OBO principles I hinted at before. They provide a map towards interoperable ontologies. So some of our kind of favorite principles that we have are the openness principle. This is the principle that basically says your ontology must be openly available to be used by others without any constraint, we have another principle that's talking about relationships. So if you're using relationships, it should be either reused from the relations ontology or at least aligned somehow with the relations ontology. And my favorite principle, and one of the least adhered to, the commitment to collaboration. So if you are taking part in OBO Foundry ontology development, this should be carried out in a collaborative fashion. That means many different people will engage in the process of building the ontology and not just the owner of the ontology. So we've discussed a lot of this here in great detail in our nice paper from like 2 years ago. And I would encourage you all to at least skim through it or even read it in more depth. And the problem with principles like this, similar to fair principles as well, is that the interpretation is very often down to the community and therefore a little bit variable. Now, in particular, this is just some example. We say the ontology must be openly available to be used by all without any constraints, blah, 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 blah. And then people come and say, here's my MIT license, here's my artistic license, here's my Creative Commons license, here's my custom license. I put my license statement as a string in this README file. I added I made the statement in the accompanying paper, and so on and so on. All of these are possible interpretations of the openness principles, and obviously there's a great variability here. Another example is, yeah, you should register. So an ontology developer should document if they have, when they have usages by multiple independent organizations. And people say, yeah, of course there are users. Here's the email address, you can ask them, or here's a link to the page that is using my ontology. So it's again a great level of variability of how you could interpret the text of these principles that are very diligently formulated, but there's still always room to interpret. So what we sought to do about 4 years ago, I think it started 4 or 5 years ago, is to try at least partially to operationalize these principles in a way that they don't need this kind of interpretation anymore. So in order to operationalize this, and this was back then driven a lot by James and Becky. When this started, the kind of design idea here was, can we encode some rules about that capture some of these principles in spirit? So for example, here, this is a snapshot of the dashboard that we will look at in a second as well. Now walk you through it a bit, but you can see, for example, there is this column for openness, and this openness column is now no longer left to the user to decide what it means, but we have a test that is implemented as a program, as a Python program that checks, are you using a specific Creative Commons license that we accept here as an open license? And are you registering it in your ontology and in your metadata in the appropriate standardized manner? So this is kind of the wider idea, how we want to operationalize our OBO principles in form of a dashboard. All right, so let's look a little bit at concretely at the dashboard. So rather than going through slides, I'm just going to show this to you as a walkthrough. So if you go to dashboard.obofoundry.com, it will bring you to this overview page with a bit of information, analyses, and some additional links. And the first link is to the dashboards itself. So I'm going to click on this. So what you see here is basically the front end, so the page that is being generated by the set of OBO found ontologies, is the OBO Foundry ontologies in particular that are active, as registered as active in the OBO Foundry. And you can see that here, like for example, specifically has passed this check. So for the openness check, I already hinted at, they must have put a proper license annotation inside of their ontology with a proper format. So it's a URL that describes the Creative Commons license, and they have also added this information to their OBO Foundry metadata, which and in a consistent fashion. So for example, here, so you could click on this link here, and there is a nice new feature that you can't see here right now, which shows a bit more information about these principles. But you could click on the principle in the dashboard, and it will bring you to the page in the OBO Foundry that explains to you exactly what this principle does. And it would also give you there's this link to implementation, and it will give you some this is all a little bit new here, so I'm sorry to check this real quick. Maybe, yeah, there you go. Link for this, unfortunately. There's there's a URL that brings you to a specific page that describes how exactly this check is implemented computationally using Python script and some descriptions. Yeah, so let's go back to the dashboard. So you can see there are various principles that we are checking. Format, we all require our ontologies to be in RDF XML. Use of URIs. So here in particular, we request that you use specifically formatted URIs in your ontologies. In particular, the ontology URI should be formatted correctly. Then in versioning, we want both to have a standardized version URL. So a version URL is basically a URL that allows you to retrieve an ontology at a specific version, like for example from last January. And this should not only exist, but as you can see here, if you look at why this particular one failed, it also has to resolve. So if you're using OBO pearls, it should resolve. Actually, if you use the version IRI, it should resolve to a specific ontology on the web, is that specific version of the ontology. Other tests, I'm not going through all of them now because we are running a little bit slow out of time, but we want mostly to you should have definitions provided for your classes. But if you see this red error here, that there's something really wrong. In particular here, you can see there are two duplicate definitions, so two classes that have the same definitions. That's one example. Or I think, and then there are a bunch of missing ones. So these are the main errors here. This relations principle, I've hinted at it before. This was about using and reusing relationships from the relation ontology. And let's skip through these ones here a bit. And lastly, here in the end, we have a specific robot report, which provides some extra information. So let's just look at a random one here. ISM, and look at the report. So here the report is a standard part of the robot of robots. So you could, if you wanted to just run this across your own ontology, this is not This is not restricted to OBO ontologies. Maybe some tests may be a bit over-tailored, but most of them will be, or many of them at least, will be interesting to other ontology developers as well. So here you can see robot has seen some duplicate exact synonyms, so some two different terms that have the same exact synonyms, or some strangely formatted definitions or something like that. So that is the kind of information that you can find in this dashboard. So let's go back to the process. So lastly, I want to say just 1 minute something about how OBO handles actually new ontology requests that's intrinsically tied to the dashboard. So when someone like you comes and says, I want to register my ontology to whatever reason, then you make a specific request on GitHub. It's very standardized, and as part of this request, you will be required to pass a dashboard, a specific dashboard. So you will not be added to the main OBO dashboard, but there's a specific new ontology request dashboard. And now, since about a year, we require every new ontology that is submitted to pass the entire dashboard. So that means that, I mean, not the entire dashboard, there's one small caveat, but that's not important now. But the point is that now a new ontology must actually have their license correctly formatted and have no duplicate definitions and so on and so on. Otherwise, they can't even be admitted for review in OBO Foundry. So that is part of the general process. So once they pass this dashboard, this new ontology request dashboard, then we assign a reviewer from the OBO Foundry, and then this reviewer will go and do a human review of the ontology and provide some specific feedback, and then make a recommendation to the OBO operations committee for inclusion or for rejection. So here, this is just another example of a separate dashboard that we use. So this is the new ontology request dashboard with the new ontologies in it. And now this is the last thing I want to say, and then I will hand over and take a few questions. So one thing that we have been starting to use these dashboards for is for actually creating customized dashboards. So this here is the Monarch Initiative ontology dashboard. So this is a project-specific dashboard. And the cool thing is here, not only do we check all of the things that the OBO Foundry requires for passing these various principles, but also we can add stronger standards that our organization wants to promote. Like, for example, we want all terms to use DC contributor with an ORCID, and the ORCID should be well formed. Now, this kind of thing is not mandated by the OBO Foundry right now, but it should be anyways one day when we get it past the governance processes. But we want that stuff to be standardized in all of our ontologies. So we add that check to this board. And now if people click on one of these things, they will see, okay, you may have used your contributor with the wrong ORCID format, or not use the right property for this at all. So that kind of stuff, I think, is quite interesting for people that are not interested to submit their ontology to OBO Foundry. They want to develop application ontologies and so on, but they want to build their own dashboard that covers their own specific needs and ongoing quality control. And we will see in the end, in the end of this today, how you can set up such a custom dashboard. So we have like 2-3 minutes for questions about this part, if you have any. If not, we will continue forward. So if you want, we can take 1 or 2 questions right now. It's gonna give you like 20 seconds to collect yourself, and if not, it's also fine, then we can move forward.
Can you confirm that the top row, I mean the column headings in this dashboard are the metadata, or metadata something else?
So I'll show you. I'll show you exactly how this where it lives. So these column headers here, they point simply to the principles themselves. But I'll show you, for example, I think we can actually go from maybe not immediately, no. So I could show you how to see these ones on obofoundry.org. So let's go to the same one as we were before. I'm going, actually I'm going to cop, and I'll go and check the metadata now. All right, so this here is the ontology metadata, which is in red, which is part of the OBO registry. So you can see things like the license, where's the homepage, some description, contact information, and so on. So this is the kind of thing that is being checked by the dashboard, as well as the actual code that looks inside of the ontology and looks at what is in the ontology in terms of metadata. So there are two kinds of metadata being considered by the OBO dashboard checks. Is this okay as an answer for your question?
Well, quickly, yes, but we can take it later.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing, and I'll leave you to share. I had a slide that I forgot about. I'm just gonna quickly show this. Actually, if you could put it on, Charlie, so we don't lose time, and I will just quickly say one word about that. So, all right, so this is a typical question we get quite often. Great, we now have a dashboard. Now what? So how do we actually get people to go green, so fix their problems on this dashboard? And here I just want to give you a quick sentence here. What we do, the way we deal with this, the first is policies. So for example, we have decided in the OBO Operation Committee that by the 1st January of 2024, the board must be error-free. So that's very important. And if your ontology is not error-free, you will be not removed from the OBO Foundry, but you will be relegated into a different status. About how important standardization is and so on, give you tools to deal with these issues, and try to provide other kinds of carrots, we call them, like inclusion into graph, which we will hear about, I think, next week in a bit more detail. So if you are good at, if you're a good citizen and you're trying to standardize well, then you can get admitted to other kinds of projects like Ubergraph. And lastly, one thing that is really important is that obviously OBO is just like a small part in the semantics and ontology domain, and another effort and another thing that we need to try to do is to align our work with the work of other people that also provide dashboards in an overlapping space. So for example, here, this is from a super cool tool from AgroPortal, which has a fair scoring dashboard in it. And what we try to do is also to work with communities like the FAIR community, like AgroPortal, like Ontoportal, like Elixir, and Fair Impact and Fair and so on, to try and also on a higher level integrate metadata together. So this is just, yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that. And now let's move over to Charlie. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nico. So first of all, apologies, everyone. I'm sick right now, so I'm going to do my best to be legible. So yeah, I've also kind of stumbled into the same space and become a very close collaborator with Nico and other people within the OBO Foundry, and then with other ontologies outside of this. And so I want to present kind of two different perspectives of other dashboards besides the OBO Foundry dashboard. And I think, first of all, I have to pay deference to the OBO Foundry for coming up with these principles and then for operationalizing them, because this is a very important first step. But from my perspective, as somebody who isn't an ontology developer himself, and even though I've dabbled a little bit, I wouldn't call myself one. The things that I find important as a consumer of these, somebody who likes to build knowledge graphs and biological models and lives in this kind of space, there are things that are missing from the OBO Foundry, and this is a very conservative organization that balances two very tricky things, which is what would we have in all ontologies in a perfect world, and what are the practical limitations of time and funding and motivation to clean up what exists already. I found myself kind of in the space where I wanted to build my own little dashboards that could help me provide pull requests and sort of systematically address issues. For example, like this discussion about attributions and using ORCID IDs. I think I've really tried hard to push this within the OBO Foundry community, and like build tools that kind of assess that, and then use the platforms that exist, such as GitHub and GitHub Actions as a continuous integration, continuous deployment system, and in combination with GitHub Pages to like build these dashboards that kind of like update themselves and provide sort of the status of what's going on in the ontologies. So I actually want to just sort of share with you two of these dashboards that I've built. So the first one's called the Ontology Quality Assessment Toolkit. So maybe somebody can copy this link for anybody who wants to follow along. I'm going to go ahead and just bring us right to the webpage. And so something maybe before clicking links on here, I should also note that I really care a lot about prefixes, queries, and IRIs and standardizing these things, because even across the well-defined OBO Foundry space, the prefixes that people use are very, very heterogeneous, like we mentioned before. And so like if you want to consume an ontology and then like make it match up to another one, people using different prefixes for different things is problematic. So I've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort thinking about this problem. If that's interesting to you, I would also sort of shamelessly plug the bioregistry as a more generic tool for the biomedical and life science and natural sciences space for dealing with prefixes and queries and IRIs. But really what started happening is I was going through ontologies and looking at their cross-references and the provenance they were writing and thinking like, oh, wow, I don't know what that prefix is. And so I found myself over and over and over dealing with the same problem where I'll go through an ontology and then I'll find something I don't know what it is and think, where do I even go to solve this problem? I have to probably go and ask the people who made the ontology and maybe do some historical like digging to find some people who haven't been working on it for a couple of years. So I thought maybe it'd be better if we centralize some of that analysis. And so this is like the first of one of these things that made it into the Ontology Quality Toolkit assessment toolkit. So I'm going to click on this analysis of unknown prefixes and just show you kind of like, where do I spend some of my time when I want to deal with the prefix situation in OBO Foundry? So what this dashboard is showing across all of the ontologies, not just in OBO Foundry, by the way, but other ontologies that are also linked by bioregistry, it finds references that appear either as like cross-references or in cross-references and synonyms or in definitions as provenance. And so sometimes I go through this list and ask myself, like, what are these things? So for example, one that finds its way to the top of the list is tear. And so this is actually something that people in this community may be familiar with. It's this Arabidopsis model organism database. But actually what this prefix corresponds to is not super well defined. So, this is a place where I can kind of look a little bit more deeply into who's using this prefix that isn't really registered in the bioregistry and it's not really well known. And so, the plant ontology, some other ontologies are using it, and we can kind of follow up at how they're using it and start asking questions like, maybe these people can either standardize what's inside their ontologies or they can give a little bit of feedback. Maybe another example in here is CastGen. This is one that's used in like some vertebrate ontologies. And so all we have to do is follow up with the people who are the maintainers of these ontologies to sort of deal with, over 4,000 references that are being made to this, which don't really have any context attached to them. And this is really valuable because across, the thousands of ontologies you can find in BioPortal and OBO Foundry, there are a lot of people cross-referencing things and they can use whatever they want for prefixes in their queries. But it would be nice if we kind of gave tools for people to analyze what's inside their ontologies and if that really matches up to sort of external standard. And so this, this dashboard updates itself once a week, and it takes a couple hours to run, but it runs on GitHub Actions, and then it redeploys this website. So, if you're the ontology owner for the cell line ontology, there's a page that gives all the information about what's in the cell line ontology that needs to be sort of updated. So you can see there's this like not very well defined go see prefix, which, okay, go people, don't at me. There's some other issues going on with this, but like JB:JB, this shows up 17 times within cell ontology. Not to pick on them, but this is the sort of thing that we can identify systematic things that people have done, and there were reasons for using queries that looked like this that might have to do with the tools that people used, or that might have to do with some other curation standards that aren't standardized. So we can find systematic things happening by having a dashboard that does something like this. Sort of the same thing can be done to identify invalid locally unique identifiers. So like, let's say people are making references to a known prefix like cell line ontology, but they're doing it in a sort of non-standardized form. So this cell line ontology prefix has like this redundant prefix within its locally unique identifier, which I've affectionately started referring to as the banana based on some things that other people have said. So, this is a way for us to also, by doing these kinds of analyses, to improve the quality of existing ontologies by making sure that they have standardized references. Okay, so let's jump back. There's really a lot to say about this ontology quality assessment tool. There's also another thing that helps us look into the versions. One other thing is there's actually another dashboard that's made by Peter Kremen, and this also looks directly into the versioning. Okay, so I think I've got like 5 more minutes. So there's kind of a different kind of dashboard that I want to present, and then I'm going to come back and check out the questions in the chat. So besides the quality of, and the content of the ontologies themselves, there's also sort of this aspect that I've been a little bit worried about. Is like, how do I trust resources, ontologies that are being built? Because there's a lot of things that get built, they get posted to the internet and then abandoned immediately. Within the OBO Foundry, there's a lot of high-minded principles to make sure that people have responsiveness to questions and that they engage in the community, but this isn't perfect, and it's very hard to patrol. So like, are there ways that we can measure people's active engagement with the ontologies that they claim to be maintaining and that are part of the OBO Foundry community? And sort of these ideas can be applied to other ontologies that aren't within OBO Foundry as well, but how do we trust that they're being maintained? And so I bring you to a second dashboard, which really focuses more on the metadata associated with ontologies and sort of the repositories where they're being developed. And so maybe this only applies to people who are doing their work and their curation in the open, which I suggest everybody does this, because you gain so much from having a community be able to look at what you're doing and interact with you using these social workflows such as issue trackers and pull requests. But the question that I wanted to ask is like, which ontologies are actually being updated, and are they using various tools like the ODK, and what kind of impacts do they have, sort of surrogate measurements with stars? Maybe I'm going to jump back to the page where this is sort of living. Yeah, and so you can find that ontologies have a lot of open issues. Maybe they have a lot of open pull requests. When's the last time that somebody pushed to the repository? So this kind of dashboard gives us insight into, our ontologies really being developed, and they give us some proxy measurements for them. Also, it pulls, this specific dashboard pulls a lot from the OBO Foundry's metadata, which also has like contact information for, if you go onto the GitHub repository, who do I kind of put my @ symbol and ask them like, hey, can you give me some information? So having the primary contact person for each ontology is really important. And maybe a year or two ago, when I got involved in OBO Foundry, this kind of information wasn't really well organized, and I spent a lot of time tracking down who's the contact person for each ontology, beyond just their name and some cryptic, maybe outdated email addresses, and finding like the GitHub handle that goes with them and the ORCID ID maybe. So the flip side to this is knowing all the information about each ontology is great, but also like, what is the workload of each of these people? So maybe this is a little bit invasive, and if anybody's upset about being shown this way, then please let me know and I'll try and remove that information. But the other side to this is kind of looking at who are the people who are the contacts, and like, what is their commitment to the actual ontology community that this is serving? And so like, maybe if you've been listening to these talks, knowing that Chris Mungall and Frédéric Bastien and Oliver He and Ji Zhang, they're like some pillars of the OBO founder community, and they're in charge of tons of ontologies. And like knowing that these people are still like active within the community, like they've pushed to GitHub and they're still around, like this is really valuable. Finding out that people are let's say like not active on GitHub, but they're responsible for ontologies. Like, okay, there's the second page. So Matthias Brockhausen is responsible for several ontologies. Alpha Tom Kodamu is responsible for several ontologies, but these people aren't actually engaging in GitHub either by participating in discussions about issues or making pushes to GitHub. So like, I put less trust in these ontologies when I know that the person who's responsible for them isn't participating like on GitHub. And this is like a very liberal way of checking, like just are they doing something on GitHub? Might not even be, are they actually participating in discussions about their ontologies? So this is one other way that we can kind of look at ontologies and judge, should we trust them? Should we reuse them? Maybe we make the choice that ontologies where people who are responsible for them actually aren't participating on GitHub anymore. Maybe those ontologies aren't maintained and we won't be able to have discussions with those people if we need to make new term requests, if we want to make some pull requests because we already felt like we should make some improvements, maybe based on things from the last dashboard. Let's go back to the slides because this is a total mouthful to listen to all of this. And then maybe we got a couple minutes for discussions, and then Anita's going to give the last sort of bit of this presentation. Here's one thing that Alexander Deal wrote is Jonathan Bard, one of the original creators of Cell Ontology, is like JB. And so like this is somebody who's not active in the community anymore. And in many places I found, oh, here's this person that I don't know about, being relatively a young scientist with respect to the ontology community. And so this kind of stuff, it's obvious to people who've been around, but not obvious to newcomers. And so maybe another take-home message is that we want to make sure that people can figure out what's going on and unpack the last 20 years or 30 years of scientific history. And Nico made one other thing to make it clear. My views on trust are my own, and I have a very high opinionated opinion on everything when it comes to science. So take all this stuff with it as you will. If you want to try and reuse these things, I love getting feedback and trying to implement new things. So then I'll open it up. James, I cut you off.
Oh, it's okay. There's a few questions in the chat about how often the OBO community health dashboard is updated. And I think maybe your screenshot was a little bit old.
Yeah,
and it had
I
some
noticed
older dates
that,
on it.
I did set it up to run automatically, and I actually just reran it before we had this chat. So if you want to look at the most recent stats, you can just hit the refresh button. I didn't hit the refresh button because you know what happens when you prepare demos, they can always just explode the minute before. So I thought maybe I won't do that. So the ontology quality assessment, I finally figured out with a lot of help and building on the backs of giants using the Docker container and GitHub Actions that uses the ODK, which makes all of these great ontology tools that these things are built on, like Robot, Owl API. So shout out to everybody who's participated in building and maintaining those, because none of this stuff would have been possible without it. The other one's a little bit more tricky. The social assessment workflow relies on the GitHub API, and there's a couple of things that I've never quite figured out with how to make that run on an automated way. But if people are interested in having that thing being more up to date because they want to be using it, then I could put more effort into improving its automation. Though the analysis is fully automated.
But okay, now I see that there is a date at the top. It says OBO Community Health, and then it says the paragraph in the last run. So everyone can see that. And if the things look a little bit old, that'll be why. Cool, thanks, Charlie.
Alan Barron asked, how's the OBO Community Health Score calculated? To be clear, this isn't a health score sanctioned or ordained by the OBO community. This is Charlie's health score based on Charlie's value system. And yes, this is why I keep myself at arm's length from official OBO Foundry things, because I have a lot of very opinionated views. So I can explain that a little bit more offline. If anybody's interested.
I'll be sharing it. I'll be sharing it. I think it's wonderful.
Great. Then I want to invite Anita to give her part of the presentation, and then we'll finish up. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. So let's as week if someone was there. So I come for the practice part. So let's Okay, so first, as Nico said about the OBO dashboard, and here we have an overview of the workflow for to create your own dashboard, not actually an OBO dashboard, but then it can be customized as you depend on your ontology. But then it's using some OBO principles, and also we can customize to add the other tests. So here first, everything we start with the dashboard template. So we just create a new repository from this template. Then the second part is the configuration, the dashboard configuration. I will show you in a bit, but then it's everything that you need to configure your the dashboard. You'll be here, only this file here. Then you just need to enable your repository to have the GitHub page working into this repository. And the next step is easily an action, a GitHub action is going to run all the configuration and then apply for the dashboard, and then create all the pages and links and everything. And in the end, we just have a dashboard, a colorful dashboard, or yeah, more like green dashboard. So here we have a link for the a how-to tutorial, then explain all these steps here if you want to follow after. But then I'm going to show you now like a demo. So here we have this is the dashboard template. So first, to create a new repository from this template, we simply go to this use template and then create a new repository. I will just create a simple here, a test repository. Just go create a repository from template. You take some time to copy all the files from the template. And then we have our own repository with the templates, with the everything that we need to generate a custom dashboard. So I'm going to show first everything, so then to start running to generate the dashboard, because it takes some time, and then I'm going to explain what the custom configuration you can add for your ontology. So if you remember, first we need to enable the GitHub page in this repository. So we go to settings, page, and then just choose here the main branch, and then save it. And that's it. It's already enabled. And now we can, we edit here the dashboard config to add our ontology. So this is just a test ontology, just for the sake of this tutorial. But yeah, and then we can go to actions. Yeah, it already started the Git page action, but then we trigger the first time, because we didn't change anything in the dashboard configuration, so we need to trigger manually the action. So while it's here, the GitHub action is running, I'll go back to here to explain a bit of all the parameters we can add into your ontology. So yeah, first the ID. then also we can have a link for the AU file. Yeah, for your ontology. Then we can add a title, a contact, as Charlie also said about the people, the responsible people here for this ontology. Then add a description, the domain, the homepage. This project could also add the products, the list of products, because in the OBO we have, for the same ontology, we have at least three versions of the same ontologies, so we can list more than one product here. Some also the dependencies that we can have for the ontology. The tracker issue, the link to the ontology issue tracker, the license, the preferred prefix, and then the base namespace used in the ontology. So this will also help to be conformed to in the dashboard, so will be valid, or yeah, we can show this in the dashboard. So let's see if it's, yes, it didn't work for sure. Yes, this is good actually. That is good that it didn't work, because this is because it's the new repository I just created, and then usually they show this message that is saying that the GitHub, there is no permission to write in my repository, because the GitHub action actually creates a pull request with all the chains of the HTML page. So to fix that, actually we just go here into the settings, actions, general, go all down here, and then the workflow permissions, select read and write permissions. So we save it, and then we can trigger again the workflow, the GitHub action. Yes, so yeah, maybe I can ask some questions or answer some questions. Yeah, because while it's running, because I'm going to, yeah, it's going to. No, maybe I forgot to say something. Yeah, there is to continue about the dashboard configuration. So we have all other type of configuration for the general dashboard, for the whole dashboard. So this, yeah, some just to give the path for the robot, and then how many rows the robot report will show in the end. And then also we can add some custom tests for in the robot report. And then as the base, we use the robot report profile. So yes, and then yeah, I think this is more the general how the dashboard is configured. Yeah, this is just some scores for the OBO score, but then yeah, just it's interesting to have this set. So if your ontology it's interesting to enter in the OBO community, so it's fine, good to know how it's already. So let's see. There is another thing that I forgot, of course. That is the GitHub action is not permitted to create or approve pull requests. So it's another setting that we need to make sure that it's check it. So this part here, allow GitHub actions to create and approve pull requests. So yeah, and then save it. And then let's try again. This time I think it's no, but it's really good because all the settings there. The first time it's
Thanks, Anita. Do you want to take some questions while this is running?
Sure.
There's been lots of questions about the whole session asked and answered in the SoPub chat. But yeah, any questions for Anita?
If no one's got something, I have a question, just a little bit of extra information. So can you put kind of like what Nico, sorry, I'm totally scatterbrained for being sick. The Mondo dashboard, which shows that there's ability for the OBO dashboard to be extended with new checks. Is this sort of as easy as implementing new Python scripts, similar to the checks that are already in the OBO dashboard? For like whatever custom thing you would want to look at? Or is this generally extensible?
Yes, I think this is part of the customization of the robot report. So it's the Sparkle query will be included in the robot report.
Okay, so you implement it with new Sparkle queries. It's quite
Yes, cool. Yes, yeah, I can show you here.
In fact,
so here we have the Sparkle folder. So you put here all your custom testing. So here's, for example, the missing xref. So you create a Sparkle query to test it, and then you add it in the dashboard configuration here, as in the custom part. You can set the type of the warn, the status, so can be warn or something else, or the error, and then you just pass the path for the Sparkle query. So this is included in the robot report.
That's really cool. Thanks.
But this doesn't become a new column, if I'm understanding right. It's just added to the robot report profile.
Yes, yeah, like here, like yes, view report, and then here missing. Yes.
Great. Yeah, I think, Charlie, to add new columns, you'd need to hack the code a little bit. I'm not aware of any effort to make that modular yet, but I don't know, it shouldn't be too hard. Fundamentally, each of those columns is just one Python script, but yeah. Oh, it worked.
Yes, I was not lying that it worked. So yeah, so it worked after finish the GitHub action. It create a pull request, and then you can check all the chains here and all the pages, and you just can merge it. And then again, yeah, the GitHub action for the page to have the deployed, to deploy the page. So yeah, now it automatically runs. So we just need to also wait to this finish, and then we can see the changes.
Cool.
Yeah, will be exactly this one here, because it's another repository testing that I created before. So will be exactly this, the result.
Cool. Yeah, I wrote some of the original dashboard stuff, but I've never seen this this work you've done. So I appreciate you showing us this new stuff. It's really cool. We're after the hour, so I would like to wrap up. Next week, Jim Bauhoff is going to present on Ubergraph, which is a knowledge graph that brings together all sorts of OBO resources, and all the things we've been building towards over these last sessions are really getting there. So using Cobb to coordinate the upper level, and Robot to get the lower level tooling working, and ODK to get everything packaged up and standardized, and now these dashboards to check and have visibility on the problems that could cause problems for integration. And then the last bit is, yeah, bringing all that stuff together, getting all these functional ontologies working together in the same knowledge graph. So I really hope you'll come next week and see that talk. And yeah, you're, as always, you're very welcome to continue discussion of this, especially like in our OBO Slack would be a great place. But yeah, I'd like to wrap up by thanking our speakers, and hope I will see all of you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you all. Thanks, James.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye now. See you next
Okay.
week.